How you doing, Coach?
How you doing?
Hey, I'm great. How are you?
Anybody still call you PJ?
Yeah, so Buddy Gray was calling me that for half the interview,
That's
which was
funny.
great. So, Pete Hansen Football here. I am talking to my old head coach in high school, Concord High School, longtime New Hampshire coach, 37 years coach, right? If I read that right. So we're going to talk today about his experience, why he coached, some of the things he learned, and some of the things I think about when we talk about, hey, it's not about all X's and O's and wins and losses, although that is a big part of football. For most of these guys that I've been talking to, it's a lot more about what you can impart in some of these young guys to help them build some skills that will help throughout their life. Is that pretty accurate, Coach?
Very accurate.
All right, so first thing I want to just give our viewers here a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up? Where did you play football? I know you played in college. And then how did you get into football?
Well, actually, I grew up in the central part of Manchester. And when I was a kid, 6, 7, 8 years old, 9, 10, we used to play football in the back alley with my neighborhood buddies. And I had never thought about going out for Pop Warner football. My neighbor, who was playing, he was 2 years older than I was, basically grabbed me by the shirt and pulled me over to the practice field and said, "You got to play." So I started playing. I played my 7th grade, played Pop Warner.
Yep.
I was 114 pounds. But the next year, I was 140. I didn't make the weight limit.
Yeah, because it's 115, right?
It's 125.
125, okay.
So I went on a diet, my diet, and I lost 14 pounds. I was 126. They wouldn't let me play. I missed it by a pound. But that was my experience of football, beginning of football. And I loved it. My 7th grade, I had a great time. We were 0-8. We lost every game by like 40 points. But I had a great experience. The coaches were good. And, it got my interest.
So that weight class thing. So what happened for kids that were over the weight limit? Did they have to play junior high if there was a team? Or was there no option, really?
There was an option. It was a flag football league at Memorial High School.
Okay.
And I played in that and met some good people, good friends, and so it kept my interest for another year until freshman football.
All right, good. So then on to high school, and where did you play?
I went to Bishop Bradley High School right in Manchester, all-boys school, and I played as a freshman, and I had one coach, Tony Ayer, for 1 year, actually 2 years, excuse me, and then my last 2 years I had Don Surratt and Dick Powers. Dick Powers was my assistant coach. Okay. And Don Surratt was the head coach. He was a famous athlete in Manchester, went on to Syracuse, and he was a quarterback on the national championship team that beat Texas.
Oh,
so
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
He was.
And Surratt, did he coach at Concord High too?
He did. He coached at Concord High, won a championship, I believe in 75.
Yeah.
And I tell you, it was the roots of him and Dick Powers that really got me interested in coaching. Because I had a great experience my 2 years of high school football. And then I went on to Northern Michigan.
Okay. So it sounds like the seed was planted in high school to hey, I kind of like this coaching.
Just the way Don Surratt approached the game, it was very intense.
Yep.
But he was very fair, and Dick Powers, played football at BC. He was an outstanding lineman for Boston College. Right. So those two brought a lot of football knowledge, to high school football at the time, and they were a great influence for me.
Yeah. So then you went on to, you said Northern Michigan. How did you end up at Northern Michigan from Manchester, New Hampshire?
Well, I got a few offers from other schools, but I would have had to go to a prep school.
Yep.
And I didn't want to. And it just so happened that one of the assistant coaches at Northern Michigan was from Preble, Mass. He was real good friends with Lou D'Alessandro.
Okay.
And who was an outstanding athlete at University of New Hampshire. And so he would always, talk with Lou and any athletes in your area that we could take a look at. And he mentioned my name, and that's how the ball started rolling, and I got a scholarship, and I went out there.
Okay, so you were on an athletic scholarship.
Correct.
Is it full, partial? Or?
No, it was a full scholarship.
Nice.
So,
and what was your position?
I was a tight end.
Tight end, okay.
And that was a great experience because I didn't know anything about Northern Michigan, although You know, they sent me pamphlets and brochures and everything.
It
So
wasn't like you had the internet to just go online and see
I
the
read
whole
all about
campus
it.
and get a virtual
They actually
tour.
had a great. They had some great alumni. Actually, this assistant coach I was talking about, Frank Novak, was a little All-American, but also one of the alumni at Northern Michigan before I played there was Len St. Jean, who was a very good lineman for the Boston Patriots.
Okay.
So I had an interest. You know, I said, these guys are playing there. I said, they had a great schedule. It was independent.
Yep.
And we played all the Mid-American Conference schools that are playing now.
Yeah.
The schools like Akron, Youngstown, Eastern Michigan, Western Michigan. I mean, it was a very competitive schedule, but we were independent.
Yep.
And so I had a great football experience playing some great schools.
Yeah, good. So tight end, full scholarship. What were you getting your degree in at that point?
Physical education.
Yep, okay.
But I got to mention my college coach, again, like Don Surratt and Dick Powers. He was very influential. He was an outstanding coach. His name was Raleigh Dotch.
Yep.
He coached at the University of Missouri under Dan Devine.
Under Dan Devine.
Under Dan Devine. And then he went on.
Coached at Notre Dame.
Correct.
That Dan Devine, yeah.
Correct. And then he went on and coached at Northern Michigan, had great success for about 5 or 6 years, I believe.
Yep.
And then he went into the pros. He was actually he coached Steve Nelson at the Patriots. He was a linebacker coach.
Okay.
And he coached many years in the NFL.
Yep.
And unfortunately, he passed away early, but
Okay.
he was an outstanding coach. And he, again, a great influence, you know, that drove me into coaching.
So when you were at college, you were, again, getting more seeds planted about coaching. You were really sort of focused on how coaches coached and sort of picking up on that and gravitated towards that. Is that accurate? Like at that point, did you think, man, I think I'm going to do this. I'm not sure at what level, but I think I want to get into coaching, or hadn't it solidified yet?
I always had a great passion for football, even in the back alley playing touch football, and it just evolved throughout the years. But like I said, the coaches I had throughout my high school career, college career, I mean, my offensive line coach was outstanding at Northern Michigan.
Yep.
Talk about someone very intense. He was intense, but again, fair, you know. And I think that's what I learned from a lot of these coaches. They were very intense, very passionate about football.
Disciplined.
But they were very fair and good with the athletes.
Good. Okay, so after you graduated, what year was that?
That was 1975.
1975. All right.
January of 75 or December of 74.
Okay.
And I applied to many schools in the New England area. Obviously, I wanted to come back. And it just so happened to teach and to coach.
Yep.
And
you were already looking for an opportunity to coach.
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, I just had a love for it, you know, just the way the guys coached me. I think I want to pay back and do the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, continue my passion for football.
Yep.
But I applied to so many schools in the New Hampshire, Maine, Massachusetts area. But it just so happened that Trinity High School, you know, which, you know,
your old hometown.
Exactly, had an opening for a PE teacher, and the head football coach, Ken Shacker, got me involved, and that was my first teaching job.
And so
coaching.
And so Trinity, private, right? Catholic school, smaller, but Division I, Class L back then.
Correct.
Right? So how many kids, roughly, do you remember how many kids were in that high school?
Geez, I want to say about 465, maybe a little bit more.
So
maybe, I think about over 600. That's what it was.
Okay. So it was a pretty good size, but it was one of the smaller Class L teams.
It was, but we had kids from all over. We had Manchester kids, Bedford kids, Londonderry kids. So a lot of kids came to Trinity High School. At the time, it was very, successful in different types of sports.
Yep.
So, you know, it drew from many areas.
A lot of good athletes, probably too.
A lot of good athletes. I mean, my first year there, we were in a state championship game.
Yeah.
You know, I was an assistant coach, and trying to think who we played. But anyway, we were in a state championship game that year. Oh, we played Salem.
Salem, okay.
And that was Ken Chacker's good friend, Huey Johnson, who was the head coach at Salem.
Okay.
And unfortunately, we lost the game. But again, you know, I had a great experience. I thought I knew a lot about football coming out of college.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot coaching, you know, watching film, breaking down film.
It's a big transition for people, right?
Oh, it is.
I found that when I started helping out first at Concord High, volunteered back in 2000, and then stepped away because I had kids, family, and all that. But just this last few years, getting back into it, helping out at Pembroke Academy, there's, different levels of kids' motivation, why they're playing, who's really locked in, who just wants to be on the field, who wants to be with their buddies, hanging out and trying to then instill discipline, technique, the actual coaching of a player. Because as a player, it's very different, right? Your perspective is, I'm physically doing this, I'm doing my technique, whatever it is. But as a coach, probably your teaching background and some of the teaching skills you learned in college probably helped with that.
Oh, definitely. And I think the most important thing is, you mentioned about the players. I think the players need to have a unison where they have a great love for each other and love the game. And I think that's much easier to coach a kid like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you got to foster as a coach. You got to foster a group that comes together, works hard together. And I think that's the key word, is working hard together. And they share the same experiences. They get closer as a group. And to me, that's what breeds success. Yeah,
and speaking just from my experience playing for you at Concord, the camp that we went to back then, Camp Mytina, right? That a lot to me was building relationships. As a sophomore, when I first moved here, right, your first year too in Concord, it was rough as a 16-year-old, 15-year-old kid, right? And football was a sort of a conduit for me to get to know guys.
You were a sophomore at the time, were you?
Yeah, I was a sophomore.
86?
86. And small, I was 125 pounds, 5'7". So I didn't hit my growth spurt, which, I didn't put on much weight by my senior year, but I was tall. But it helped me build relationships with the guys. So by the time school started, I already had some friends. Because moving to town was pretty hard for me.
And I've gone to camp many, many years, and I think that really brings a group together.
Yeah.
I mentioned about the work ethic, working hard together. I laugh because I think of this player. I think he was a senior when you were a sophomore. Kevin Mason.
Mace.
He went on to Marine.
Yep.
Paris Island.
Still hanging in touch
He went
with
on
him.
to Paris Island, but when he came back, he came to see me, and he said, "Coach," he said, "thank God I had football camp because it was harder than Paris Island." Not many guys could say that. I laughed when he said that because we had 3 days that were very.
Yes, it was tough.
It was tough
in the
for young
kids. The morning country mile we used to run. I remember running with Jason Caparello. It's like. It's like 6:30 in the morning, and you guys, the coaches, are all like, "Yeah, you just go down this road, you cut back, and then you'll come back into the camp."
I even think I ran with you guys.
Yeah, I think you probably did. I don't know. Coach Davis probably did. Some of the Coach Poitras. We'll talk more about that too. But let's get back to your time at Trinity. And so you were an assistant coach first?
I was an assistant coach for 3 years. My first year was with Ken Chaka, who did a great job, and I learned a lot from him. But then he left to go to Memorial High School.
Yep.
And then he wanted me to apply for the head job, but I was young. I was 24 years old at the time, and I just didn't think I was ready for it. He kept coaxing me, saying, "You are ready. You just got to. You have a great work ethic. Yada yada yada." But long story short, I didn't apply for it. Sandy Ruggles got the job, and I coached with him for 2 years. And then he left for another school. Then I became the head coach in 1978.
1978. Okay. So does that mean you've been coaching for longer than 37 years?
No. It was 34 years as a head coach, 3 years as an assistant.
Okay, so it is 37. All right. So we got that right. And I don't know if it's changed, but at least from the article I read talking about 37 when you retired, you are the third winningest coach in New Hampshire high school history, I think. 200 and something wins behind Brian O'Reilly and was it Linehan up in Plymouth?
Correct. Chuck Linehan, great coaches.
Yeah. So congratulations on that, coach. That's something to be proud of. You get up there, that's a big deal because now I have a greater appreciation for how much work that goes into it. Like our head coach at Pembroke Academy, the hours you have to put in. And now we have all this online tools, the huddle, film. You're like watching film late at night. Back in the day, you were probably watching it on VHS, and we would meet at your house on Thursdays.
That's funny.
But yeah, so you finally get to be the head coach. Now, What were the things that did you think really intentionally about, this is what I want to do, this is the culture I want to build?
I think I just wrapped myself into it, and I didn't even think about it. You know, I just coached and learned a lot my first year. I learned a lot in 1978, but I had a good team. Kids were very cooperative, and they were just great kids, and they were intense too. And I had a captain that year that went on to Yale. Rick Williams went on to Yale football.
Oh, went on to Yale. Okay.
And did a great job there for 4 years as a player, but he was an outstanding physical captain, and everybody just gravitated to him.
Yep.
It made it much easier. So we were very competitive that my first year as a head coach. I believe we were 7-3 that year.
Okay.
And we lost some tough games, but back then only 2 teams made the playoffs.
Right.
And so,
so it was just one played 2 in the state championship.
Exactly. So we didn't make the playoffs that year, but it planted the seed. And like I said, I learned a lot that year. I just wrapped myself into things that a head coach does, and it was a great experience. And I think my love for the game actually grew after that first year, and because I immersed myself into everything. I mean, football, high school, it's not just 3 months of the year. You know, it's an all-year thing, because you got to watch your players. Their performance in the classroom. Obviously you want them eligible, and the weight room. I started weight room practice, which a lot of coaches didn't do back then. But like I said, at Northern Michigan, we lifted weights quite a bit, and our off-season workout programs were very intense. So I think I brought that aspect to high school football.
So were the parents at that time involved much as they are now? And did you have a booster club?
We did have a booster club at Trinity my first year there, and continued. And they were very, very, very helpful. They stayed away from football, but they were very helpful in things that
fundraising, some of those
and
things,
so on.
making sure.
And we got involved in that too. The players got involved in that too. So it was. But as far as parents, they weren't on top of me. It was good.
You've coached a couple years at Trinity, assistant coach, then you were a head coach, and you had a couple good seasons there. How long were you at Trinity, and what was the sort of final result there? Pretty successful?
I was at Trinity for, 8 years, 78 to 85. 85 was my last football season at Trinity High School. But, it was a parochial school. We weren't getting paid as much as public schools, so, I was looking around, and Concord was opened up, and I applied for Concord and became the head coach and PE teacher at Concord High School in 1986.
So at that point too, you were married, you had a young family starting, right? A couple children, and how did that impact the football at all, the coaching? Did you?
Well, when the kids were little, my first daughter was born in 81, my son was born in 83, and my youngest daughter was born in 85. So all my years at Trinity, I had young kids, but I would take them everywhere.
Yeah.
I was also the athletic director too at Trinity High School, which was very, very demanding.
Yes.
In fact, all of my 3 jobs, that might have been putting in the most hours.
Because there's some game going on every day almost.
Back then, girls' games were, I believe, on a Monday and Thursday, and boys' games were on Tuesday and Friday. Then hockey games were on Wednesday and Saturday, and I had to be at all these events.
And Trinity had good hockey too, right?
They had good basketball. They were state champs in '75. In hockey, they were
so
very
most
good at
nights
hockey.
you're working into the night, 7, 8 o'clock.
And I'm bringing the kids to the hockey games. I'm bringing them, because otherwise I'd never see them.
And you lived right in Manchester.
So they had a great experience. Pete would be riding on the bus with me.
Yeah.
In fact, he might have been on the bus, on Concord games.
Yeah.
But it was demanding, but at the same time I learned a lot.
So
be able to put everything in and be organized and so on and so forth.
So by that point, did you feel like you had a system down, and what kind of offense and defense were you running at Trinity?
Well, at the same time, Trinity, I ran an I option type of offense, a multiple I. I didn't get into the famous T formation until, I believe, 81 at Trinity High School. And my friend of mine from Michigan, who my college teammate, his father was an outstanding coach, probably one of the most successful coaches in Michigan, and he ran the T formation. And John, my buddy John Engel, text, we would exchange films, we'd talk to each other quite a bit, and he said, Gati, you got to start running the T formation. So he sent me diagrams of the T formation back then. I mean,
you had to get it in the mail. It wasn't like send me an email with all the PDFs.
And
fascinating.
But also, he sent me films too, and I'm breaking down films of his offense, and I started implementing it. And at first, it was very successful because people couldn't defend it.
Right.
But this is back in '81.
It was very disciplined. It had fakes.
Very disciplined offense, and but it was very successful. No one else ran it, so it was hard to defend. And 1 week, a team's got to prepare for a T formation because you got to really break down, the trap, the off tackle play, the outside play.
You have to respect all the options.
Exactly,
and that's hard for
high
school kids on defense to know. Hey, stay. You have the fullback. Then you got to check to the tailback going off tackle, and then the quarterback can keep it, right? 3 threats every play.
Brian O'Reilly at Pinkerton used to practice without a football. And he would tape white tape around the wrists of the players. So you think they have the football.
Oh, okay.
It was pretty...
So they would stick with the guy they were assigned to every time, whether he had the ball or not.
It was pretty innovative.
Yeah.
But I was fortunate. Even at Trinity, I had some outstanding coaches that really helped me in my young stages as a head coach. I ran into Eric Brown, who coached at Concord.
Yeah.
And I knew of him, playing football at Manchester Central. He played with my cousin. But I was jogging in the summer. He was jogging. We met each other on Maple Street. We stopped talking, and all of a sudden, what are you doing? He goes, doing this and that. And I said, why don't you come coach? So he started coaching me back in 1979.
Wow.
And I
did not know that.
Oh, he was a great influence on the kids. He did an outstanding job. And I had one of my former players coaching with me too, who was my captain in 79. He coached me in later years in the 80s at Trinity. And I was blessed. All my stops, Salem, Concord, Trinity.
So you're meeting other coaches. You're learning. You were mentored by other coaches that you coached under it initially, learned some of the basics, and then how to sort of run a practice, game day prep, all those things, right? Film study, scouting, all those things you sort of learned pretty quickly out of college, right?
Exactly. I learned how to prepare a practice plan, from college. Every day practice plan would be on the board. Every step. Offensive lineman doing this, that.
By minute, right?
By minute. And so I replicated the same thing, when I first started coaching as a head coach. I would always put up a practice plan. You probably remember those practice plans.
Yes, I do. I remember them well.
And the conditioning drill at the end.
That's
the first thing
big bends, air raids.
That's the first thing players would look at, the conditioning.
They don't care about forward to. Yeah. Well, that's interesting because what I've found just from talking to coaches is just this short period of time is that a lot of them are connected to a lot of other coaches that I didn't realize. Like they crossed paths, coached together at some point, and then diverged. A lot of them became head coaches, but they all speak about that experience as being really positive.
It definitely is. And you know what really, how should I say this, increased my knowledge of the game? My first year as a head coach, there were some great high school coaches at that time. You had Tom Dobney at Portsmouth. You had Hugo Bolin at Spalding. Ken Shacker was at Memorial when I became the head coach. So there were some outstanding coaches that really made me prepare more.
Oh, yeah. Because you knew you were going against a guy that was disciplined too.
And these guys were coaching for a long, long time. I was a young guy at that time, and these guys were the older guys that had coached for many years. And so that really helped my preparation for the game of football.
Okay. So then you come to Concord. Now, was that an entirely new coaching staff at that point? Did anybody come with you from Trinity?
Well, actually, a player that I coached in the 1981 Shrine, 81 Shrine game, I believe it was Jim Davis, Coach Davis. You had mentioned him. I coached him in the 81 Shrine game. He was a very good player in high school football for Pinkerton. Played at Plymouth State. And so he came on board, I believe, in 86. Bob Cameron, who was coaching, he and I coached together with Ken Shacker at Trinity for about 3 years. And then
I didn't know that.
Then when Ken Shacker left for Memorial High School, Bob went with him. And then when Ken went on to Salem High School, Bob went with him.
Right. Okay.
Then Ken Shacker went to coach at Lowell, University of Lowell.
Okay.
I think he coached against
Yep.
you.
Yep.
And Bob didn't have
And
a
then-
job, and all of a sudden, when I got the job in '86 at Concord, I brought on Bob Cameron,
Yep.
who was an outstanding assistant coach.
And he worked in Concord. He was
He worked in Concord.
elementary school teacher, right?
And I
Don
had Jim
Poitras.
Davis. Donnie Poitras was an outstanding coach. I mean, I had a very good coaching staff at Concord High School.
I look at the and I have the scrapbook, of course, and you have the pictures of the full team picture at the beginning of the year, and it was like an all-star team of coaches looking back, right? A lot younger guys that were assisting that went on to do different things, and you know, Bob Cameron, of course, went to become the head coach here at Concord and won a state title, and so it was just fascinating to see. You guys all had you were all dressed really uniform. You know, the gray shorts, the classic 80s coaches apparel, right? The gray shorts, the white polo shirt. If it was cold, then the khakis came out. And I remember that. But to me, that spoke to, like, you thought of the little things. You took care of the little things too, that little things mattered. And that it all was part of discipline. Like, you even get dressed a certain way and you prepare because you want to look good, you want to look like you know what you're doing, look professional. I remember Coach Cameron, Coach Cameron talking about that when it started to get colder. Like, if you're going to wear a turtleneck, it better be white. You know, it better be white under there. Don't come with some, you know, purple or blue thing underneath that's going to throw off our uniform colors. And
we did have some cold weather, huh? A couple of years, 87, 86?
87 state championship game.
88?
Geez, the 87 state championship game in Dover against Salem.
That was the coldest game I ever coached.
It was like 12, I think it was 12 degrees, but the wind chill, it was negative something.
Negative 20.
And at halftime, the whole stands went to the cars. Everybody went to their cars for 20 minutes to warm up.
The band couldn't play their instruments.
Yeah. And Channel 9,
it was cold.
Channel 9 was recording it, and they were having video issues because the cameras were freezing up. They were.
And you guys came out, I think Jason Wimpy came out with shorts.
Yeah, I did. I had the long johns. I had the white long johns on.
That's because you were smart.
I had the full, plus forearm pads, everything. You know, I needed everything I could get for padding back then.
That was a cold day.
But I remember, and we can talk a little bit more about that game too, but that was such a magical year in my career anyways, in high school, because that 87 team, you know, we started off a little rough. I think we were 1-2, and then we went on a little bit of a winning streak, had another loss, and then we got into the playoffs late.
4th spot.
6-3.
Yeah.
So we got the 4th spot, and we had lost to Nashua, who we had to play in the playoffs in the semis during the regular season pretty handily, if I recall. They managed us pretty well. We made some mistakes, but they were undefeated, and and then the other teams in it, Salem, who we ended up playing in the state championship, their only loss was to Nashua. So we went down to Nashua right that year. The playoffs had to play them down there and had just an unbelievable game.
And that was a cold day too.
And that was a cold day. It had snowed.
It snowed.
It had snowed.
I can remember
that week. A lot of snow too.
We had a practice that week, and
outside.
We had to brush off snow.
Yeah.
to practice.
We did, and it was wet. And I remember too. Here's why this stands out to me, Coach, is because that night I go home and I'm watching WMUR, and they're doing a story on Nashua that night, and Nashua was practicing inside in their gym.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
And in the locker room, we were like, those guys, they're inside. They're not taking us serious. I'm serious. It was like one of those things. It was like, wait a second.
That's funny.
Maybe they're not ready for us because, you know, they were undefeated and they were a really good team. Royce Potts, across the board.
Yeah.
Typical Nashua, big high school, right? This is before, folks, Nashua had a north and south. There was just one Nashua high school with like 3,000 kids.
You're right.
And we had 1,200. But yeah, so talk a little bit about that, because you came in '86, your first year, you know, trying to install the tee. They'd never played that here.
Oh, it was quite a transition. But you know what? The players really took to our style immediately. And not that we had a little success in the beginning, but we played teams very competitively.
Yeah.
And I think that was a big thing. And I'll never forget, this is one of the most, exciting things for me as a coach to see the players after that Nashua game. I think
Yes.
it was the middle of the season, and Nashua was
them.
very good that year, and we beat them, I believe, I don't know, by us. We came back to beat them at the end of the game, and the players in the locker room were jumping each other like we won the Super Bowl.
Some of them were crying.
Players were crying.
Yeah.
That was very vivid in
Bruce
my mind.
Mayhew was our quarterback who went on to play at Columbia.
Correct, Bruce Mayhew.
And
yeah.
he was more of an
not a
I-Pro quarterback, as you know.
He was not a believer in a team
He
formation.
was not, but I think he became one that night.
He did. And, you know, because we beat a very good football team like that, the players, you know, like I said, they bought into it right away. And the fruits of their labor didn't really show up until that night.
I think,
and to come back to beat Nashua on that night and to see the players, you know, jumping around like little kids after a big win, you know, I think that stuck with them. It stuck with me.
Yeah. Oh,
And
it definitely did.
We remained competitive throughout the year. I don't think we had a winning record, but I think we were 5-6, which was a lot better than,
I think we were
you know,
right around 500.
And we were competitive. That was the main
Yeah.
thing. And I think that really sprung to the 87 season.
We had some real big wins that year that people didn't expect us to win.
Exactly.
And that was really helpful to build for the juniors and sophomores to see, like, okay, this offense really works if you work it and are disciplined. And the last thing I remember about that game, Coach, you know, I was in 10th grade, just in awe of everything going on, you know, and we're on the bus afterwards, getting on the bus, and a lot of the students from Nashua were like rocking the bus. Coach Poitras jumps off the bus, starts screaming at kids like you probably wouldn't do it in this day and age, right? Because somebody would have a camera going. But yeah, they were pretty upset that we walked in there and pulled that off. But yeah, you're right. I think that was the game
that
where
was a big
people realized.
Not so much a turning point, but I think it really put something in the kids' minds, saying, "Hey, this works."
Yeah.
You know, and all the hard work we're doing is paying off. And, you know, they bought into it. And I think that really sprung to the 87 season.
Yeah. We talked about when you first came to Concord, 86. We talked about that year. And now 87. Let's talk a little bit about that season, because that was a big one, of course. That was my junior year. Your second year at Concord.
Well, after the 86 season, you know, like I said, I think we were 5-6. But I had expectations with this group coming in because they were very excited to play and great leadership, you know, with Jason Wimpy and Brian Stevener and Jeff Daniels. I mean, and the younger players gravitated to them, and I think the ball started getting, you know, some momentum.
Right.
And we started out right off the bat, you know, being very competitive, and you know.
Good backfield with Kimball, Pepin, and Seabold.
It was a very small backfield.
Yeah. It was
I believe
small.
the biggest one was Mike Pepin at 152.
Yeah.
I mean, Seabold was probably 148, 150 maybe.
Yep.
Kimball was
150, 160 maybe.
But they were very disciplined, and they did exactly what we wanted to do, and we were very successful running the T formation. And that's when it really became, you know, I think teams really had a hard time preparing for us.
Yep.
And that's what made it successful.
We were pretty big up front, too, for the most part.
We had some good
size tight end. We had a young Derek Noel.
Who was only a sophomore at the time. He was a big kid.
Chance as well.
I believe we had Ron Berman at one guard.
Yep.
Was Rick Wester starting then?
No, I think it was Berman.
We had Mike Kennison at center.
Yep, Mike Kennison. Bryant Stevener, that was a good front line.
Oh, Shane Burgess.
Shane Burgess, yes.
Who I saw last week at Candy Woods.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Shane. He still looks the same too.
He does.
He's kept in good shape.
So I mean, that was a big thing. And we started playing very good defense, which really complemented the offense.
I remember that. As much as we had to be disciplined on offense, you were a stickler for defense. Like the term, you win championships with defense. Or defense wins championships.
You know, everyone thought it was the offense, but basically, you know, the defense, you know, we ran a 4-4 defense, and we had 4 good linebackers. We had 4 good linemen. We had 2 good reading tackles. Yep. And Jeff Daniels and Brian Stevener. And I mean, in a defensive backfield, I had 2 quarterbacks as defensive backs. Yourself,
Rob Millay,
and Rob Millay,
and Kevin Kimball.
Kevin Kimball.
Yep.
So it was a very how should I say, not a great defense, but a very good defense, and
a little bit.
That helped us in obviously a lot of games. It helped the offense helped the defense.
So
and we had a lot of plays going both ways too. That's
yeah. I think there was like 8 or 9.
Probably.
I was probably one of the only that didn't go both ways. But was that part of the, the T was famous or is famous for ball control, 7-play, 12-play drives. I remember my senior year, we had one that was 17 plays, and it took like 8 minutes off the clock. So if the other team doesn't have the ball, they can't win, right?
The offense was actually a good defense too,
right?
Because you kept the ball away from the opponent's offense. But
so ball control, grind it out. We had a lot of 300-yard rushing games.
We did usually probably lead the state in 300-yard rushing games, and that was a big part of the offense. And in each back, we didn't have one back that started, even though I think Kevin Kimball might have been my first 1,000-yard rusher.
He was, and he missed part of that year too because he had a dislocated shoulder. He missed 2 games.
Well, I don't remember that.
We had to move Siebold. I was reading about it last night.
What?
We had to move Siebold to fullback, and we had.
I got to shake the cobwebs a little bit. I don't remember that. Wow.
Yep.
And he still had 1,000 yards.
Yeah. And he was fast.
Yeah.
When he got into the open field, he was really fast. He was
a
track athlete, and
he was a good track athlete.
Siebold, just tough as nails.
Oh, he was.
Pepin, a young Pepin, right? Because he was the junior.
But
he started as a sophomore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so by then it was kind of getting to be a well-oiled machine. Like those guys had been running that for a while.
Yeah. And you mentioned having the ball control for 8 minutes. Going back to Trinity, we had it was my first year in '81 running the T formation. Yep. And Central beat us in the middle of the season, like 38-14. I mean, they pummeled us. We played them on Thanksgiving Day. It was a championship game, city championship game.
Yeah.
And we beat them 9-6.
9-6.
And we had the ball the last 9 minutes and killed the ball. The game was over. We were on the 5-yard line.
Right.
Going in.
And we're happy. That's okay.
That's it.
3 yards to carry.
It was amazing.
You got 4 plays to make 10.
And basically that's what it was, because every play was 3.5 yards.
In a pile of dust.
And so that was kind of like the first time.
Yeah.
We saw a lot of success around the T.
So again, that season though, we started a little rough, got our feet under us, had a little bit of a winning streak, and then lost later in the year against Dover. But then we ended up 6-3, got the last slot going into that. So talk a little bit about that playoffs.
Was it Merrimack?
We ended up playing. Merrimack was still Division II. We played Nashua. This is '87.
Oh, that's right. It was 2 games back then.
Yeah. So
I
we
think
played
in '89 it was 3 games. Playoff.
Right. Yeah.
But, yeah. Correct. So our first playoff game was against Nashua.
Yep. Undefeated Nashua. And
in a
from
cold,
what I recall,
snowy day.
Yeah. From what I recall, it was, let's be disciplined. We can do it. We felt a lot more confident than we did earlier in the year when we played them. I think we felt like, they beat us, but we were ready. We were a different team by then.
Well, it took a while, but just like you said, I mean, the confidence level was very, very high. The players knew what they needed to do in that particular game. And a name just popped in my head. Brian Casey was their quarterback.
Yes.
And there was a picture of him after the game with his head down like this. I mean, it was worth 1,000 words on our side.
Yeah.
But I mean, the way we played the game against them, in this, I don't think the field was covered with snow, but it was cold.
No, it wasn't. There was snow banks around the field.
And I think that helped us.
Yes.
Yeah. And
ball control,
exactly.
running. They were a little bit more of a balanced. They had a good running back in Royce Potts.
But our defense was at its peak at that time.
Yes.
And that was the key. Not so much the offense, but it was productive. But the defense was the key in that game.
And one of the things from reading from my scrapbook last night was we made some changes. You said in the article, it said we stunted a lot more in that second game. Like we were aggressive. We didn't rely on the reading like we had in the first game, and we wanted to surprise them. And really, from the very first series, I think they ended up with 3 and out minus like 12 yards. We sacked them on 3rd down for a big loss, and it was like, okay, the tempo's been set. And was that something that you knew you had to do in terms of, because I know in 88, my senior year, we threw in some wrinkles. We didn't deviate too much, but in the state championship game in 87, we scored on 2 plays that we'd never run before.
The jet pass?
The one to Wimpy.
Correct.
The fake jet, tight end release, and then we ran the fake punt.
Oh, that's right,
remember the fake punt to get the first down, the very next play.
That was a big
I think it was was probably
to Noel, I think.
To Noel on it must have been 40 Michigan.
Yeah.
Because Malay faked and then dropped straight back and threw it for a long play. But those were things we weren't known for.
Correct.
But you took a couple risks.
Well, that's after watching a lot of game film, coaches, and you got to make adjustments here and there, and so we might have had I can't really think of the minute adjustments we made, but we did make adjustments obviously after watching the first game against Nashua, and then if I remember correctly, we did a lot of stunting from our defensive ends, blasting off tackle with with Derek Noel, and
Jeff Foote.
Jeff Foote, that's right.
Back.
And Jeff Mayo.
Because he missed.
Jeff Mayo was the other
Mayo was
defensive
up front.
end. So maybe that.
Yeah.
I don't think Derek played defense that year. He was only a sophomore. He just played offense. Yep. It was Jeff Mayo and Jeff Foote came up with some big plays.
Yep. And Shane Burgess was, I think, at that time on the D end as well. But that was a good thing. We had a core group of guys that really
believed.
Yes.
That's the main thing. If you have players that believe in what you're doing, they're just going to work harder, and then when you attain some success, it just creates more.
It builds, right? The momentum.
Yep.
It builds more confidence, and that leads to more guys being willing to do the things to set yourself up for success.
That was just a fun year, because I love watching players give their best effort, and because we weren't the most talented team that year.
No.
But the effort part, and that's something I've always preached from day one. Attitude and effort. And the effort with that group in '87 was as good as any team I've ever coached.
Yeah.
And to come from 4th place, to a state championship game and beat a highly talented Salem team, that was pretty unique.
They were certainly favored, just like Nashua was in the semis against us, because their only loss was to Nashua during the year in a very tight game.
It was a two-point game.
Yeah, and so the pundits or whatever were picking Salem to win easy, but
we were heavy on the dogs. Heavy on the dogs.
Yeah, I guess they didn't know the heart.
That didn't even bode in the minds of our players.
No.
The players were very confident. And they heard all this stuff about Salem being so good.
Yeah.
But it didn't bother.
Sweet. There was a couple names. It was guys. We watched the game film and at your house that Thursday, and I remember there was like one kid who was kind of cocky on the field. I was like, man, if I tackle that kid, and it was nice to have that build up though, because I remember coming home after we beat Nashua on the bus. You were talking to us and you were saying, hey, listen, there's going to be some hype this week. WMUR, there's going to be articles and stuff. Stay focused. Like, our job's not done. Because I think there was a little bit of a tendency to be like, oh, this, a little bit of a letdown after you beat an undefeated team in the playoffs. But let's not forget we got one more game to win. And I think kudos to you for thinking that, recognizing that a lot of young 16, 17, 18-year-olds would probably have their head a little big having beat Nashua, but hey, let's go, guys. Let's deflate it a little bit and let's focus on what we got to do.
And that's a tribute to the players, to have that mental capacity to, calm down and realize, what's
focus on the task.
What's at stake.
Yeah.
And like I said, that group was very confident, and they brought the most of their abilities to the game.
Hey, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this first part 1 of 2 with retired football coach Jack Gati. I've really enjoyed my conversation so far. I hope you have too. So please stay tuned for part 2 coming up. I decided to break it up into 2 because it is an hour and a half long, and I figured that might be easier for people to digest. But I appreciate you coming along for the ride. If you like this video, of course, hit like, subscribe, share it. but mostly comment. If you played for Coach Gati or played against him, or maybe you coached with him or coached against him too. I would like to get that conversation going and join the community. So I hope you enjoy it. Stay tuned for part 2. Pete Hansen, football, signing off.